Okay, Jay, you said that Mr. Marceau came over with the gun, and sort of by that, since he was gripping the gun in his pocket, that's sort of a way of initiating the incident, correct?
It's not a way of initiating it, it's showing my client that you have a potentially hidden weapon while walking over to him.
So it put your client on edge, correct?
Correct.
Okay, but still, didn't your client initiate both incidents technically? He started the fight with Raymond, and he pulled the knife out, which initiated Marceau to pull out the gun and shoot him.
Correct. He started the incident with Raymond earlier, and Marceau and the Arab personally had no interactions. The Arab fought with Raymond the entire time, where Marceau combated against the Arab's friend. So he started that altercation, but this time the Arab was completely alone and did not have his friend with him. And when he turned around, he was at the spring first, and he stayed there where Marceau walked to him.
Okay, so let me ask you another question then.
Okay.
Is it really Marceau's responsibility to look out for your client's aggression? If he's walking over to the spring, that's a public place. Anybody can go there. So it's not Marceau's responsibility to look after what the Arab is going to do. Correct?
Correct, but as I said, he said in his head there was a previous altercation. He was aware going in that something was going to happen. He knew that, he said to himself, he knew that there was going to be some form of altercation. He may not have predicted he would have to use the revolver, but he predicted that he pulled it out. And that's the other thing. He could have pulled the revolver out and not shot. And as I said, the Arab man, he did not move at all. He just stood still. So if the Arab man moved towards him and he shot him, yes, that's self-defense. But I feel that with him having the upper hand in the situation, that's not self-defense, and that it was instigated by Marceau walking up to him with a possible concealed weapon.
A knife is still a deadly weapon. And the other thing that you were saying, well, I'll let you off there, but the other thing I was saying is, you're saying that Marceau thought in his head that, yeah, as he was walking over, that something could happen out of this, correct? Well, at the same time, the Arab did see him walking over, right?
Correct.
So the Arab could have still premeditated something in his head as well. You don't know that for fact. So he could have been doing the same thing. So in that situation, I don't believe that Marceau is guilty for thinking anything in his head, because this guy did attack his friend earlier. So of course he's going to have something thought up in his head about what the Arab could potentially do. And therefore, it's still not his responsibility to tame the Arab's aggression.
And if I could add to that a little bit, when Marceau was walking up, he did see the Arab, so of course he's going to prepare himself for some sort of fight. If you were to walk alone to your car in a bad neighborhood and you get inside, that's like not locking your doors and just like sitting in there. You would obviously try to protect yourself if you're in a potentially dangerous situation, which he is because the Arab has a history of aggression. Although Marceau and the Arab didn't actually get into a fight together, Marceau witnessed firsthand the Arab cut Raymond right on the face, which is a traumatizing experience for anyone. So after that, he starts carrying a gun around. It's not premeditated on Raymond's part whatsoever. And the fact that the Arab stood still with a knife and Raymond shot him, it was so hot outside that beads of sweat were rolling off of his head and got into his eyes. Marceau, awkward. Had beads of sweat rolling off into his eyes, blinding him, and on top of that, there was a knife at the reflected sun in his eyes, which, again, flashed him, blinded him, scared him, so then he shot the Arab once. Thinking that the Arab might not have been dead, he wanted to finish the job so that the Arab couldn't come back at a later time and come back to hurt him, so he emptied the revolver on him.
How would there be any way of the Arab getting back to him? He shot him once, he's going to jail.
Well, yeah, he shot him once, but he could still say there's self-defense. Like, it wasn't his fault, he was scared. It wasn't his fault. But if the Arab had recovered, came out of the hospital, he clearly has a temper because he came after Raymond on the vendetta. So who's to say he won't come back after Marceau?
He probably would.
Precisely.
But that's not the point. The point is that he walked up the... Okay, let's look at it from the Arab's point of view. You turn around and you see a man that you knew was involved in an altercation earlier, and he's by himself as well. He's not with Raymond, or they had another friend with them too. Raymond's friend, the owner of the mansion. So he was all by himself too, and as I said, the Arab recognized him as well, yet he just laid back down, whereas Merceau continued to walk up to him. So yes, so in the Arab situation, he's walking up to him from a very, very far distance away. He recognizes him, but thinks, oh, he's far away, he knows what happened earlier, he's not going to bother me over here. So he laid back down, but he proceeded to come after him and to walk up to him. So when he turned around and he sees a man that was involved in an altercation earlier, holding his hand in his pocket, has no idea what he's holding, just walking up to him from 1,000 yards away, of course he's going to stand up and pull a knife on him because he knows that that man already knows he has that weapon. Merceau already knows he has that knife, so him pulling it is just once again showing him, I have a knife, stay away from me, which is why he did not take a step towards him. He wasn't looking to cut or murder Merceau. He just pulled the knife out and stood still because he didn't want him coming near him, but Merceau, having a gun, he didn't have to come near him to kill him. He just simply had to shoot him, which ended up turning out to be unloading an entire revolver on him.
Let me ask you, don't you think there's more peaceful ways of stopping somebody from walking over to you than besides pulling a deadly weapon? If you wanted him to stop where he was and he didn't have the intention of doing anything with the knife, then wouldn't he tell him to not come any further? Or would he pull a knife on him and initiate Mr. Marceau to pull the gun?
He would pull a knife on him because when he turned around, he kept watching him and he just kept coming up to him. And when he got extremely close, he was also had his hand in his pocket. So maybe the Arab thought maybe he doesn't have a gun, maybe he has a knife too. So if I pull my knife and he pulls his knife, then they either one of them will walk away or they'll get into a quote-unquote even fight. So he just pulled it out because he knew Merceau had a gun. He knew Merceau was holding a weapon.
You didn't know that.
It was obvious he was holding some sort
That's based
of
on his
object.
assumption, as opposed to Mr. Marceau seeing that the Arab has an actual deadly weapon in its hand.
And did Merceau actually provoke the Arab in any way?
No, he did not.
Then what's your provocation for saying it's murder?
Because he walked up holding a gun and specifically walked to the Arab and pulled the gun on him. And like I said earlier, he did not shoot him one time. He had the advantage the entire time in the situation, yet still chose to shoot him 5 times.
I think we've established that he successfully killed and maimed this body with 5 bullets from a revolver. That's not the point. The point is he shot the Arab in self-defense. He had no provocation. He didn't taunt. He didn't provoke the Arab in any way, shape, or form. The Arab was the first one to draw the weapon. As a result, Mr. Merceau pulls a gun in defense, gets scared of the whole situation because clearly he's a timid person in general. He's not prepared to fight anyone. Gets scared, shoots the victim. He gets even more scared, wondering what's going to happen next. Is he going to come back? Is he going to hurt me? Shoots him even more, just making sure that he's dead, making sure that he finished the job. Not even caring about the repercussions afterwards, just concerned about his own personal safety.
Or maybe Merceau walked out to the cold spring, saw the Arab, decided, even though I know this is a bad situation, I have a gun, I'm ready for it. So maybe then he thought, I'm going to walk over there, I want my spring water, if he doesn't let me have it, I have a gun, so I'll kill him.
Is
And
that
maybe
your speculation, or
Wrap
is
this
that,
up, though.
alright, is that your speculation, or is that what Merceau actually said? What's going on in Merceau's head?
what's going on Merceau said is, I want water, I have a gun, I'm going to grip it and make sure I can pull it out when I go over there if something happens.
So was he actually, did he go over there with the intent to harm the Arab in any way?
Yes.
No, he went
Yes,
there.
he was holding
He
the
went there
gun while
prepared.
walking over.
Actually, no, because if you recall, before that, Mr. Marceau took the gun from Raymond after the altercation where Raymond got cut in the face. Raymond had the gun and was considering shooting one of the Arabs after that. And Marceau was the one that took the gun from him and said that he didn't want him to shoot anybody, it's not worth it, and took the gun away from him to keep the peace. That is true. So, and if that's the case, then why would he go over later with the intention of killing somebody?
Because maybe he took the gun because, looking at his family situation, Raymond still had some things in life going for him. He still had family, he still had girls that he knew. As I said, Merceau had no women in his life, he had no family. So he figured if someone is going to shoot him, that someone is gonna be me, because if I'm in jail compared to Raymond being in jail, there's a big difference. Raymond has everything going for him, whereas Rousseau just kind of lost everything important in his life.
Yeah, well, let me ask you: is it fair to determine his Mr. Marceau's intentions off the quality of his life?
No,
Exactly.
I just want to end it there. I didn't have a conclusion.
Alright, you want to conclude first, or?
Yeah, I can speak first.
Okay, so in conclusion, Rousseau is guilty of murder for killing the Arab man. For this, he had his hand on the gun while he walked up to the Arab. The Arab saw him walk up in the far distance and just laid back down. He walked up to him knowing it would start a confrontation. He actually said to himself as he walked up, "I knew it was a fool thing to do. It struck me that all I had to do was to turn around, walk away, and think nothing more about it." Also, if he was to go to jail instead of Raymond, like Jay had said, it wouldn't have affected anyone, whereas if Raymond was sent to jail, it would have affected a whole lot of people. And this is mainly why he wanted to get the revenge for his friend Raymond, and after the earlier altercation, and this is why Rousseau is guilty of murder.
Okay. Well, I would ask you to reprieve my client, because it's evident that he's not guilty of murder, but it is self-defense. Mr. Rousseau had no intention of going out of his way to go harm the Arab. There was no plan of any sort. He simply wanted a drink of water, and as he got there, the Arab pulled a knife on Mr. Rousseau, scaring him, and as a result, the Arab winded up getting shot. It wasn't a cold, hard killing. It wasn't anything like with intention. It was just self-defense, plain and simple. And that's it.